Begin the current Masechta Bava Kama, the first of Seder Nezikin. Obviously, it's called Bava Kama, like we know. It's Bava Kama, but Bava Basra. It's just the gate. The first one, the second one, third one. These are all one Masechta. Masechta is Nezikin that is split up into three different parts. And the first one talks primarily about the laws of, as we're going to learn in this parak, about damages. Which the opening parak is called Arba Avos, which are the four primary categories of damages. So obviously, Kabbalistic ways of understanding this also. When the Goyen talks about these are different types of characteristics, which we know the number 4 is very fundamental. But Al Kapanim, it's going to open up and talk about the primary categories of damages. Turn to Daf Yomi. Turn today's Daf should be a schus v'achim Yisrael and Israel throughout the entire world. So in Parshas Mishpatim, it discusses regarding the responsibility we have for damages done either directly by us or caused by our belongings. Those that are explicitly mentioned in the Torah are what the Mishnah refers to as avis, as primary categories of damages. And those that are not mentioned in the Torah but are similar in nature are referred to as tailadis, as derivatives. Our Mishnah will discuss halachas of nazikin. There's niske gufay, which is when the person damages with his own body, and niske b'maynai, when his money, the objects that he owns, causes damage to. So our Mishnah tells us there are arba avis nazikin. There's 4 primary categories of damages: hashar, an ox; v'haboyer, there's a hole in the ground; v'mave refers either to an adam or to Shane, his ox is eating, that caused damages; and v'haver, and the damage caused by a fire. The Gemara brings a brayso that says gimel avis neme b'shor. There's actually in shiur, there's 3 primary categories. There's a keren, the horn when it gores; v'ashen, with his teeth when it eats; v'regel, when it moves with its feet. And there's 4 teladis of keren, which we discussed in today's daf. There's negifa, when the shur shoves with its body, meaning keren is with its horns per se. That's the ab. Then it's not just with the horn. Yeah, that's when it the march, the bulls, the running of the bulls. The horn is definitely a primary category. But then there's also other things that are similar when it shoves with its body, or neshicha, shur bites with its teeth. Again, these are all to cause damage. Revitza, shur lies down on something, and beita, shur kicks with its feet. So although it might be similar to Shane and Regel, those two, they're not, because its primary intent is to cause damage. Keren, the Gemara discusses and says, Toldesein kayitze behen, its derivatives have the same halacha, because Keren is the kavanas lahazik, the fundamental characteristic, as we'll see. That's one of the Shmak alumnus in Bava Kama, especially in the beginning, is that it's not about the action per se, but about the underlying principle of it. When it damages with its horn, its intent is to damage, and moinchitz your money and you have to watch it, and if not, you're liable. So haninami, all these other teiladas, when it does with its body, with its feet, when it sits on something, it's also kavanas lahazik. Its intent is the damage, and it's a moinchitz your money and you have to watch it, so therefore you can be liable just as much by the teiladas as the others. With that, we begin the opening Mishnah of this parak, of this Masechta, of the Seder of Nezikin, Arba Avis Nezikin. There's 4 primary categories of damages. As we said, the Avis are called for those that are written explicitly in the Torah. The Gemara is going to explain what are the Teiladis. Taisa points out parenthetically that sometimes we say Hain, sometimes not. This maybe because we're not saying a list per se, we're just saying comparing the Mazikin, and Taisa is not true, because it actually is a list. And therefore, just sometimes we say the word Hain, sometimes not. So what are the 4 primary categories? So if we have these beautiful pictures over here, Hashar, the ox. So if one's ox causes damage, the habor, and a pit. So the order that we're saying over here, Rashi says, is the order that's written in the parsha. That's how it was organized in the Mishnah, because the first parsha in Shemais and Perek Chaf Aleph talks about an ox. The second parsha, the next psukim right after, talks about a bar. So therefore, that's the order we're taking in the Mishnah. So Taisa says, wait a second. He says that even though the one who says, as we'll see in the Gemara, it's a debate, what exactly do we mean when we mean the mazik of shur? Do we mean shur l'ragloi? Do we mean it's regel? And it's actually not in the order of the parsha, because the mazik of regel, which is learned out from B'shilach as Be'iroi, is written after bar. It says Taisus that the name shur was written earlier in the parsha. When it talks about Keren, although that's not what shur means according to the Amam Da'amar, but it was mentioned first, it says Taisus, so we're going to say it before the mazik of bar. But he says, according to one who holds mava is adam, actually not, as the picture has over here, but rather it's actually when a person himself damages, even though it's actually written after hever, after fire, in Parashas Emor, and actually the next sefer Vayikra, Makav Hemi Yishal Mena, which is Adam the Azik Shar. Why are you saying Maba then before hever if Maba is Adam? So it says Taisus two answers, either because it wasn't concerned to say anymore like the order of the parasha anymore, because Mava, which is Adam, is so far, it's next sefer, so it just said in the order of Loy Hare of the sefer, which is a little complex, because we'll see in a moment, really the point of why we're mentioning all the four mazikin is because the Mishnah is going to tell us, if I would have said one, I wouldn't have known the other one. If I would have said this one, I would have known this one. If I would have said this one, I would have known this one. And therefore, as we'll see, the order has a specific order, because the truth is, if you would say bar and any other one, as we'll see on Daf Hey, you would know actually all the other mazikim. But if we say it in a certain order, you'll see that, oh, I wouldn't known this, I wouldn't known this, and therefore that's why we put Mava before Hever. Rabbi Tam says that that's actually not true. The Shem Adam Hamazik is actually written before Hever, not the one that we really mean in the Mishnah of when a person damages an ox, but when it talks about Kiyignev Isha, when the man steals an ox, which is also one of the obvious nazikin, as we'll see later on, a type of mazik is when the person steals. So again, the Shem Adam is mentioned before Hever, and therefore that's the order of the Mishnah of Asher, Habar, Hamav, Hever. These two are written in the order of the Psukim. And the next two, Tais says two Pshatim, why we have, if you hold Mav is Regel, okay, that also comes before Hever. If you hold, I mean, if it's Shem. But if it's Adam, so then we have two answers why it would be written before fire, if really fire is in Parshas Mishpatim and Adam is only in Sefer Vayikra and Parshas Emor. So again, either because Shem Adam or because it's critical for the order of the next part, what the Mishnah is going to say. Well, this is not like this and this is not like that. Al Kapanim, that's just explaining why it's this order. But so the first two, again, like we said, is when an ox, and Vabar is when if one digs a pit in the public domain and he fails to cover it, and the animal fell in and was injured, that's your pit, you're liable, that's your damager that you're liable for. The third one is the Hamave, which is, the Gemara is going to explain, which refers either to an Adam or to Shane, that his ox is eating that causes damages, is eating someone else's produce. And Vahever. Hever is Kiseitse Eish. If a person failed to guard his fire from spreading and it caused damage, that is the fourth category of the primary categories of damage. Now, says the Mishnah the following words. Loy hare hashor kare hamava. Shor is not, this first one of shor is not like the one of mava. Now, obviously, it's going to be complex because we said we didn't even translate what mava even is yet. But in other words, what the Mishnah means to say is like this. If, it's very important, we'll explain from Tais in a second why it's important how to translate this, because there's going to be a Gemara about this, and it's going to be important on the finer point of this. Had the Torah written Shor, I would not have learned out Mava from Shor. Oh, that's why the Torah had to write Mava individually. And says Rashi, that's why we first said, Lo hari hashor, kari hamava. Wait a second, why are you skipping? Didn't you say the order is shor, bar, mava, heva? Shouldn't you be saying, Lo hari hashor, kari habar? Isn't that what you're trying to say? You're trying to say, I had to say this and this and this and this in the Torah, because if I wouldn't have known one from the other. So say, in the order of how you say in the Mishnah, and that's actually related to what Taisa said, why mava is going to come before hever, because of the lo harei. Says Rashi, no, because if I would have said that shor is not like bar and bar is not like shor, and if I would have said one, I wouldn't have known the other, I wouldn't have been able to continue the phrase of and loy zeh, and now even if I had these two, which they have a living spirit, I wouldn't have known, let's say, hever, which doesn't have a living spirit. No, you wouldn't be able to say that because bar does not have a living spirit. So you wouldn't be able to continue. You would have said, okay, now I know everything else. Why did I write the other ones? Which Torah could have done that, but that's actually not the main reason why. But that's how the Mishnah is saying it. Now, another reason is because we're coming to tell you a chiddush, that even though both of them have a living spirit, shor and mava, still, that's what we're trying to contrast one with the other. Still would not have known one from the other. So that's two different reasons, says Rashi, why we're skipping bar and we're going that shor is not like mava and mava is not like shor. V'lo ha'ri ha'mava karei ha'shor, meaning, if I would have written Mava, I would not have known. Sure, it's a little hard because you're trying to imagine what mava is. Again, it's either Shane or Adam. Al Capone, that's what the Mishnah is saying. I would not have known one from the other.
When you say you wouldn't know one from the other, clearly all these things are coming from the Chumash.
I'm saying that the question is, why did the Chumash say all these mazikin? Just say that you're liable if, let's say, you would dig a pit. I would have known that if your ox or your fire, well, learn that one from the other, exactly. So that's what the Mishnah is coming to say, that no, you cannot learn that one from the other because they have different characteristics. And if I would have said that's the characteristic you're liable for.
Isn't that mashma? It's evident that each thing is different.
Well, but that's the Mishnah is coming to explain. Exactly, that's what the Mishnah is coming to explain and say, what is that characteristic? And actually, that's actually one of the fundamental principles we can learn about in this Masechta. What is that characteristic? Because that's how the Toilades are learned out from that. Now, Taisa says importantly in the Ramasal Lo Harei, I wouldn't belabor the point, but he explains when you say Lo Harei Hashoy Karei Hamava, it means that the leniency of Shar is not like the leniency of Mava, as the Gemara later on is going to explain on Daf Daled, which, for example, let's say if your whole Shar means Karen, and Mava means Shane, which is when the animal eats something. Because Shar, his intent is to damage. Mava, his intention is not to damage, and therefore, had the Torah written Shar, I would not have known Mava, which is more lenient. And it doesn't mean like it means in other places in the Gemara. Usually when it says Lo Rizeh K'Rizeh, that means 2 points. It means the stringency, not the leniency. The stringency of this one's not like the stringency of this one. And therefore, it must be that it's not the stringency that's causing this halacha. It must be the common denominator that's causing the halacha. Here, the Gemara learned the Mishnah differently than other places because it's obviously mentioning the more stringent first. How do we know that? Because the next part of the Mishnah is going to say, and neither, let's say, if I would have said only Shar and Mava, which both are living creatures, again, either if it's a person or if it's Shane, it's still matching up these pictures, right? That it's still a living creature. Karei ha'eish, in contrast to fire, she'ein beruach chaim, which doesn't have a living spirit, meaning, if the Torah had not written eish, I would have said, you're potter on eish, because only somebody has a living spirit. So he says, Taisa, you see from there that obviously we're saying the more stringent first and the less stringent second, which means to say that the leniency of this first one is not as lenient as the second one, because usually it means the chumrah of this one is not as chumrah as the other one's chumrah. Here, the more chumrah is the first one, and the less chumrah is the second one. And I'm saying, well, this one's not like this one because the first one, number one, is more stringent than the second one. So I would have said maybe there you're going to be chayav, but the second one maybe not. That's what it says. The Gemara is learning explicitly differently because you see from the words in the Mishnah that we're saying the first lo harei is the mochamer, and I wouldn't have known the second one. So even if I would have known shar and mava, I would not have known eish. And Taisa discusses why don't we say the reasoning by when lo harei shar karei mava. Here you're saying a reasoning. Taisa says because 1 to 1 you could find a difference, but 2 to 1 it's hard to find something that 2 have over that another one wouldn't have. So as they're saying, they both have that the living spirit, but this doesn't have. So I would have thought to say that you'd be potter. And then moving on to the last of the 4, and you don't have, let's say, by these 3 that because shadarkan leilach lahazik, these 3 have a characteristic, and this is what gets fascinating that you see characteristics, and that's what's important in this Masechta, that leilach lahazik, they go and they damage. So shar, whether it be a goring or whether it be a regal, whatever it is, and mava, whether it be adam or shein, and eish, which is fire, either way, they're all going and damaging. They're not kariyabar like the 4th one, she'ein darka leilach lahazik, which it's enormous not to go into damage. So if I would have only said shar and mava and heva, I would not have known bar, because bar does not move. So therefore, I would have thought maybe that you'd be potter. Therefore, you have to say all 4 of the mazikin. Now, says the Mishnah, the common denominator of all these, which Gemara can explain, what do you need a common denominator for? You already said all the mazikin already. But the common denominator, shadarka and lahazik, their norm is to damage. These are all very important words, actually, because they're critical in defining what's your liability, because it's normal to damage. Okay, so obviously you have a responsibility to watch it. When it damages, chav hamazik, which then the mazik is liable, l'sham teshlumin nezek, you have to pay the supplement of the damage. But meitav ha'aretz, from the best quality of your property, that if you want to pay with property, with real estate, you got to give the highest quality in payment for the damages. That is the opening Mishnah of our Masechta. Says the Gemara the following question. Now, Mediktani Avis, you open up, you said there's 4 Avis Nazikin. There's the Avis, the well-known phrase, when there's Avis, when there's fathers, when there's primary categories, Machlal, the inference is they could tell this. Right? An Av, by definition, means, if a tata means to do kindlech. Right? So we're saying Avis, there's Tailad, there's the derivatives. So the question that's going to take us through a little bit is the following question. Tel doi sayin, its derivatives are kayotze. Do they have the same halacha as the Av? Alav kriyitzben, or do you say, nein, the tat is the kinderlich is nicht wie the tat. They didn't make it to the father's stature. So do we say the derivatives of Nezikin have the same halacha as the Av? So the Gemara points out that it's interesting because Gabi Shabbos Nan, in the halachas of Shabbos, the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, on Daf Mem Test, it's really Daf Ayin Gimel, that says, Avos Malachis Arbam Chaser Achas. The primary categories of Malacha on Shabbos is 40 minus 1, which is 39. We know there's 39 Alamates Malachas. Now, Avos, it says that this primary category is Machal Deka told us that there's derivatives. Now, the truth is, over there, told the same Kayotze behem. By Hilchas Shabbos, a toilada of an Av is the same thing as the Av. Why? Where do you see that? So the Gemara points out, Loishna Av, it doesn't make a difference. The primary category, if you do an Aver B'Shoigeg, you're chayav for a Chatas, for a sin offering. Loishna Toilada, Chatas, also when you do Toilada, you're also liable Chatas. Loishna Av, it doesn't make a difference. The primary category is Skila. Someone does deliberately, he gets stoned to death. Loishna Toilada, it doesn't make a difference if it's a derivative, is also going to be chayav Skila. So then the question, the Gemara says, wait a second. So Ma'ika ben Avla Telada, then what's the difference between the Avla Telada? What makes him the father and makes that Malacha Telada if they're both the same halacha? Says the Gemara, Nafkimina, the difference is the Ilo Avich the Avas Ba'de Adadi. If you do two primary categories at the same time, so then because by Shabbos, when you do b'shoigig, you chayv b'chatas. If you do b'mezid, you chayv skila. That's the halacha of Shabbos. That's not that. Right? No, that's not right. Chilul Shabbos is skila. Right. So if you do two primary categories, let's say someone baked on Shabbos and he also did hitzah, he carried something out, and he did them both b'shoigig, or inami, let's say shtei toladas ba'dei dadi. If you do two derivatives of that halacha on Shabbos, so the halacha is going to be mechayiv. You're going to be mechayiv two chatois. Okay, in that regard, there's no difference between av and a telada. But this is the difference. You can mechayiv a kol chada b'chad. You can mechayiv on each one individually. But ve'ilo of it av and telada today. But if you do a primary category with its derivative, lemechayiv elachada, you're only be liable for one, meaning on the av malacha. But for the telada, its own telada, you're not going to be chayiv. So if a person, let's say, carries on Shabbos, which the Ab Malacha, let's say, is Haitzah, and the Talada, let's say, is Hachnasa, bringing back in, or whatever it is. But the point is that you're not going to be chayiv two. You're going to be chayiv only one. So that's the difference between the Av and the Talada, is that when you do the Av with its Talada, you're not going to be chayiv with the Talada because it's subsumed under the Av. And that's the significance of knowing what's the Av and what's the Talada. But the Gemara says, wait a second, that doesn't work according to everyone. Yeah, even with you're saying even with it, yeah, even with yeah. That's the chiddush in that Tais discusses actually the halacha of asra as it relates to that. What is the asra of the telad? That he says maybe that should be the difference between them, and he says, oh, that might be what the Gemara's answer is shortly. But like upon them, that's we're saying that's the difference between av and the telada. Now, but the Gemara says it's not a full answer because a little bit Eliezer, according to Eliezer, he holds that if you do the av with his telada, you'll be chayv two chatois, as the Gemara brings increases on Daf Tezayin and Aleph. So then the question comes back again. So then, amai karli av, amai karli telada. What gives someone the name of being called an av, one being called a telada, if there's no difference between them? So the Gemara says, and there's two different gersois that Taisus brings over here, but the main idea is hach tahava b'mishkan chashiva, that which was in the Mishkan significant karli av. That's called the primary categories, which all of its malachas, we learn that from the halachas of the Mishkan, as the Gemara brings the Masechta Shabbos of Tesma Beis. So either there's a vav v'chashiva, but what was considered significant in the Mishkan, that's an Av, the primary category. That which was not significant in the Mishkan, meaning, like, for example, where they would take from one wagon to another wagon, those weren't the chashava malachis. So it's called a derivative, meaning it's under the category of Eitzah, but it's not going to be considered as an Av. That's why one is called, you're right, there's no nafmin halacha, but that's why one is called the Av, because it's the chashava one, and the other one is like under the category, it's not chashava in its own right, therefore it's called a tilada. Okay, so we see that what we're trying to point out is we see regarding the halachas of Shabbos, that the halachas told the saying is kayotz behen, is the same thing. But, says the Gemara, now we have another Mishnah, Mesechtes Kelim, that also has, in the beginning of Mesechtes Kelim, the first Mishnah, opens up also with Aves HaTumas. Also uses the same word, 3 Mesechtes, Shabbos, Bava Kama, Kelim. They have this in opening of a parak, it talks about Aves HaTumas. So it says the primary categories of Tumah are Hasheretz, a dead, one of the 8 types of bugs that dies, Vashech or the semen of a male, as we get to Tamad Beis, or Tamei Mace. Meaning if someone touched a dead person, that person becomes an Av HaTumah, a primary source of Tumah, because actually the mace, the dead person himself, is what's called Avi Avos HaTumah. He's a grandfather of Tumah, and whoever touches him becomes an Av HaTumah, which then he contaminates if he touches a person or vessels. And the reason for that is because it says, which that pasuk is talking about by a Tamei Mace, someone who touched a dead person. And it sounds like that he contaminates also a person, because it says, V'hanefesh nagas, anyone who touches that person, again, who that person touches that person, will become a rishon l'tumah. So the halacha is over there that told the saying lav kayetz behen, that actually the derivative. Now the way you get a telada by tumah is that when it touched, it came in contact, it got a transfer of tumah from the previous category. The derivative is not the same, because the ilu av, whereas the primary category, meaning the guy who touched the dead person himself, the guy, the undertaker, the guy who was doing the kvura, he's metam adam mekalim. He contaminates people and vessels. But the derivative, meaning we call that a rishon. That's another terminology we give for the vlad or for the telada. Is oichlenu mashke metame. He contaminates only food items or beverages because they can become a sheni. Adam mekalim lemetame. A person who touched a person, who touched a dead person, which is a telada, because the guy who touches Av, he cannot contaminate people and vessels. So you see that in the laws of Tumah, told the saying is lav kayetz behen. So wait, on the one hand, Shabbos, the Avos, the Teladas are like the Avos. By Tumah, the Teladas is lav kayetz behen, is not the same. Says the Gemara, hachamai. Teladas of Shabbos is like the Avos. Teladas of is not like the Avos. Here, by Teladas of Nezikin, what's the halacha? Do we say that the Teladas are the same? Doesn't make a difference as if it's an Av. Doesn't make a difference if Telada, if a damage is going to pay, or maybe not. That is the question. On that, Amar Papa, he says, Yesh mehen kayotze behen. There are some that are the same as the Av. The Yesh mehen, there are some lav kayotze behen that are not the same. The Gemara later on is going to explain the interpretation of Rav Papa in the Sugya, which Taisa points out, the next piece the Gemara brings now, Tanan Abban, Nabraisa, Gimel Avos, Nemr B'Shar, that there were 3 primary categories of the Shar, like this beautiful picture illustrates about the ox. When you say ox, what do you mean when you say Shar? The reason why we're bringing this Braisa over here is we're going to explain through this Braisa on which Mazikin did Rav Papa say, told the saying is Lav Kriyas, because we're going to essentially show that every Tailad is always the same as the Abba Mazik. We're going to find one that is not, but we're going to first have to discuss what do we mean when we say Hashar, to find that there's other Mazikin in the category of Shar. You have Hakeren, which is very important, this is very critical, because besides the body parts, it's really the defining characteristic we're really referring to. The horn is there to gore. That's what it's there for, to smash his enemy. The Hashain, and the teeth, we mean specifically, it's chewing with its teeth, but it's to eat, and we know that the purpose of that is to get pleasure, which we're going to discuss. The Haregel is, it tramples with its feet to break vessels, but again, that's more of its normal motion, but not for pleasure and not for damages. So those are 3 different mazikin in the shame of shiur. Okay, says the Gemara, Kerem and Nolan. Where do we know the mazik of Keren from the Torah? So turn in the Brisa. Pasuk says in Shemais, Ki yigach, it says over there when the ox is going to gore a man or a woman and they're going to die, so you stone the ox. Now, in the Gicha, when it talks about yigach, that is Ela Bekeren. That's with the horn. How do we know? This it says the pasuk in Malachim Aleph. It says V'yasle Tzidkio ben Kenana. Tzidkio ben Kenana made for him karnei barzel, iron horns. V'yomer, and he said, Koyomer Hashem. This is what Hashem says. Be'ela tenagich es aram. V'goymer. It's with these horns that they're going to gore Aram, etc. Until you wipe them out. Now, obviously, he's saying tenagach, and it's with Keren. So obviously, Negicha is with Keren. When the Torah says ki yigach is shor, a shor is going to do yigicha. Negicha, it means with a Keren, with the horn. Moreover, I might bring another source. A pasuk in Devarim. It says B'chayr, the firstborn, shoyra his ox. This is the bracha for Shevet Yosef, but we know that Yosef is saying that he's like an ox. Hadalai is glory for him. The karnei re'im. Re'im was a certain powerful animal. And the horns of the Re'im are karnav, are his horns. Behem, with them, Amim, nations, Yenagach, he will gore. So you see that Yenagach, Negicha, Kiyigach, is Karne, our horns, with the Karen. Okay. Says the Gemara, why do you have to bring me another pasuk, another source? What was wrong with the first pasuk? Says the Gemara, maybe you're going to say, Divrei Torah, Divrei Kabbalah, halacha of Torah, from the words of Nevim and Ksuvim, Lo Yalfinon, how you bring me a pasuk in Malachim Aleph, that's going to translate that Yigach is Keren. You can't learn out words of Torah from words of Navi and Ksuvim. So Tashma, therefore, I have to bring you a pasuk in the Torah, in the Varim, B'chari Shara Hardullah, where there in that pasuk you see that Negicha means Keren.
So what do you do? Like, for example, in Kedusha, you get many different psukim from the name that Chazal brought as a right.
Especially for translation.
Oh, so that's really the Gemara's question. The Gemara says, "V'hai meilafu." What? We're not learning out from the words of the Navi. It's not like we're teaching you a halacha that you're going to be chayiv or pater. It's gila milsa ba'almahu. It's just translating. It's just telling us that wherever it says the negicha is bekechanu. That's with the horn. I'm not learning out. So that can't be the reason why I have to bring a second pasuk. So you must be right. Ella, the reason why you had to say va'omer, the second pasuk, was like this. Now, the tema, what would you say? When is the Torah going to differentiate? Which is one of the classic halachas of Bava Kama, that the Torah tells us the difference between being tam lemuid, by a sure tam, an innocent tam, so to speak. It says v'chotzu es kaspoy, that you only pay half the damages, but by a muid when it already did 3 times. It says shalom yishalom shor tachas ashor, you have to pay the full amount of the ox. Nezik shalom. Oh, I would have said, when does Karen have this halacha of chatzi nezik? Is hanim ili betlusha. If I would have brought only the first pasuk, I would have said, similar to the horns of Tzidkei ben Kenana, where he had made these iron horns. Obviously, it wasn't part of the animal. I would say that it's if an animal holds a horn between its teeth and it gores, why? Why over there? Because most definitely over there, the tam is not going to pay the whole damages because that's not normal. And this is one of the critical features of this halacha of Bava Kama, is that the reason why you're liable is because you should have watched your animal. This is not something I should have entertained, that the animal is going to pick up a horn between the teeth and gore like that. So maybe, which that's actually one of the primary principles of Keren, which is it's not the norm, it's meshuna, as we'll see, but I would have thought very meshuna, Dick, like that it does it when it's detached, but when it's connected, which is normal in a way for an ox to do that. I would say, yeah. Then even from the beginning, from the get-go, the first time, you got to pay Nezik Shalom. Why is there any difference than Regel and Shane and all these different things? That's why I had to bring a second pasuk, where Karni Re'im, it says Negicha, that's the horns of the animal when it has it on its head. Obviously, that when it's connected, it's called Negicha, and therefore we see that in general, any Negicha, the Torah differentiates between when it's a tam or it's a mu'id, that even when it's on its head, it's going to be Chatzi Nezek and not Nezek Shalom. That's why I have to bring the second pasuk. Okay. Says the Gemara, Telad de Keren Mahi. What is the derivative of the mazik of Keren? Which the Gemara tells us there's 4 teladas of Keren. there's negifa. So we said the primary category, what's the normal, what's the primary entity, which the Torah is told makigach, is with his horns. But then similarly, is if it, let's say, pushes with its body, and its intention is to damage by doing that. And that's Rashi puts in those words specifically, because that's the primary characteristic. Of course, when regel really is itself also as it's walking. But then it's just walking. It's jaywalking, right? And here it's like its intention is when it's moving with its body, it wants to get you, show you, and it pushes you to the side. Or neshicha, biting, where it's angry and wants to bite with his teeth. Or the vitza, it sees some bowls on the road, and it goes and it squats on them to break them. Yeah, they also like popping. Like you get you get the packages, and the kids like popping. They also get that hana. And the beita, and where it kicks with its feet and wants to break stuff. Maybe wants to show a lesson to its master or whatever, this and that. But the reason why they're taladis of Karen is because their intention is to damage like Karen. And it doesn't get any pleasure when it's damaged like Karen, meaning not the pleasure of damage, but the pleasure of pleasure per se. Like Shane, as we'll see in a second, the element of the hezek is the pleasure. And also, the damage is not constant, which that's the primary characteristic of regel. Rashi's bavaring why these are Karen and not Shane or regel when it's doing with its body, with its teeth. And therefore, it's all like Karen, because whenever it was not yet became a mood in the court 3 times, it's not going to pay Nezik Shalom, it's only going to pay Chatzi Nezik. Okay. Says the Gemara, first a clarification question. Maishna Nagicha, why is Nagicha different? The Kareliav, you're saying you're calling it a primary category when it does with its horns, because the Chsibit says in the Torah, Kigach, so it's in the Torah, it's an Av. Well, Nagifa Namiksiv. There's a pasuk in Shemais that says Ki Yigoif. It says Ki Yigoif Shor Ish. When the ox of a person is going to be Yigoif, Shor Eyu, the ox of his friend. Now, since it says it's written Nagifa, so Nagifa, which you told me is with the body, should also be an Av. Why is Nagifa not an Av? It says Nagifa, the Gemara, no, Hai Nagifa, Nagicha he. In other words, it's not pushing with the body over there. Although it used the word Nagifa, that's also with its horn. Because the time when the Bryce actually addresses this point. This pasuk ben Nagifa, it opens up with a word of Nagifa. It says Ki Yigoif, like we just quoted, Isha Shari Eyu. When the ox of one man will be Yigoif, the share of his friend, beside ben Nagicha, but the pasuk ends with the term Oy Noida, or you find out Kishar Nagachu, it's already been an ox that has been Nagach. Now it doesn't say Kishar Nagafu, just Nagach. Well, why does the pasuk start with Yigoif and end with Yigach? Well, I'm going to tell you, Zuhi Nagifa, that this Nagifa is not pushing with the body, rather Zuhi Nagicha, it's doing with the horn. Now, Rashi points out, you can't say the opposite, that no, maybe Nagifa is a Av, and maybe saying Nagicha here is Nagifa, which is pushing with the body. Why is saying Nagifa is Yigach? Maybe Yigach is Yigach. Says no, because Nagicha we find explicitly, we found sources that it's with Karen. So that we know. When Nagifa doesn't say explicitly anywhere it's with the body. So therefore, it's saying Yigach. Now, parenthetically, once we mention that this idea, so the Gemara that Yigoif is different than Yigach, but the Gemara says, Maishna Gabi Adam. Why, when the ox gores a person, the Chsiv Ki Yigach, there it says Ki Yigach Sheres Ish. It says when the ox gores a man. But Maishna Gabi Behema, why is it true by when it was talking about when the ox gores another ox, where you tell me, yeah, the Chsiv Ki Yigoif, although you tell me it means Yigach, but it used a different terminology over there. It says Ki Yigoif Sheres Eyu. Why Taka doesn't say a different word? Why does it use Ki Yigoif? Anyways, you tell me it really means Yigach anyway. So why is the wording differently by when the ox gores an ox versus when the ox gores a person? It's a very important principle in our civilization. Adam the Isli Mazla, a person who has a mazel. Now Rashi translates that. Interestingly, you usually think mazel is whatever constellation you're under or whatever. Rashi says that a person has das lishmer is gufa. A hot mazel, a shlamazel, hot nishkan das, right? Everything he does wrong. So Rashi says someone has intelligence to protect his body. Siv ki yigach. It has to say ki yigach. Why? Because most definitely the ox has to have intent to harm the person, and he has to forcibly come and try to come ramming against the person. Therefore, that says the stronger wording of yigach. Behema do lesle mazla, but but an animal does not have mazal. Ksiv ki yigoif, which is like a weaker. The ches is maybe a little bit stronger. versus a f. Either way, there it says kiyigav because negifa sounds like he just found him standing and he pushed him with the horns, like walking next to him and just pushes him over. Another version Rashi brings is that Isle Mazla, and therefore it's not easy to kill him with negifa, which is like a small push of the horns. Rather, it has to be negicha with like force and intent, and like really ramming him with the horns, like coming in, with he's wearing some good red, and he comes underneath with the horns, and he pierces him. That's the only way he'll be able to kill him, because that's what the pasuk is talking about. Which which parenthetically teaches us something else from the pasuk, meaning from the fact that it makes negicha by Adam and negifa by behema, which it sounds like, as we just pointed out, that it's easier for an animal to kill an animal than it is to kill a person, is telling us the following halacha. The mu'id, which we'll see this sugya later on the Lamed Zayin and Alf, it's Hashem, the mu'id la'adam have a mu'id la'behema. If an ox has already killed a person 3 times, then he's already a mu'id for behema too. So even though he never killed an animal before, if he ever goes and kills an animal, he'll be chayav nezek shalom. Because that's always what we say. We'll see, is it a simon or a siba or whatever, there's a crate or is it a reflection, but either way, they're different entities. And that's why actually a mu'id la'behema will have a mu'id la'adam. An ox that killed and has become a mu'id by killing an animal 3 times is not considered a mu'id regarding a person. Because if he kills a person and he dies, he's going to have a halacha like a tam, which, what's the difference, is that the owner doesn't pay kaifer, doesn't pay atonement money, the value of the victim, because a tam that kills a person that says, sakal yisakal hashar, the ox gets stoned, ubal hashar naki. But the owner of the ox is going to be clean, meaning he doesn't have to pay the victim's value. But by mu'id it says, v'gamba olav yumas, that the owner will die, which we know that death doesn't really mean the owner of the ox dies. That's a monetary liability, which he has to pay kaifer, atonement money, for the value of the victim to his yarshim, but not literally death, like the Gemara says in Sanhedrin of Tezvav and Beis, that you only kill a person for his own murder, you don't kill him for his ox's murder. But mu'id la'adam, if he killed a person 3 times, he'll be mu'id la'behema. So says Rashi, how's it possible that you have a mu'id to kill a person? I thought you stoned the ox right away. He says is when they avoided the courts until it happened 3 times. So he wasn't stoned right away the first time. So if it becomes a mu'id la'adam, if it ever happens that he kills that the ox kills another animal, you will be chayav. And that's the difference, because a person is much harder to kill. So the fact that this ox killed another ox doesn't tell us that he's really considered that we testify that it would kill a person. So that's parenthetically what it's teaching, why it says kiyigoif when it kills an ox and kiyigach when it kills a person. But al-kapanim, it really answers the question. We says yiguf does not say in the Torah. That yiguf really means yigach, but when it does with the body, it's only telada and not an av. Okay. But the Gemara asks the following question, says, wait a second. Neshicha, you mentioned as one of the 4 teladas of Keren. Biting? Telada desheni. That's a derivative of its teeth. Many things that you do with your teeth. You eat with your teeth, you bite with your teeth. So seemingly, Neshicha should be a telada of Shen. So this is very important right now. This Gemara teaches us one of the secrets of the Av Mazikin. Loi, no. Shen, the teeth, yeshana lazeka. There's pleasure in the damage that it's causing. That's the purpose of Shen. This Neshicha, there's no pleasure from its damage, and therefore has the characteristic. Again, characteristic is important, not the superficial. Say, oh, you look like your mother, you look like your father. Yeah, but my characteristics, who am I like? This is different than what do you look like? And it's with the teeth. No, but the characteristic is what's primary. There's no pleasure for the damage. The Gemara asks a similar question. It says, wait a second. 2 of the things you mentioned, revitza, about squatting, and beita, about kicking, those are talada de regel, he says the Gemara, because by bending its feet, that's how it squats. Shouldn't that be taladas of regel? Says the Gemara, no. Regel has zeka matzah. The primary characteristic of regel is that its damage is common, because it's always walking, and an animal walk just goes and just knocks whatever's there, and it's gonna damage. Hani in zeka matzah, these the damage are not common because it's not normal for it to get angry and kick something or to deliberately squat on something to break it. So therefore it's a lot of Karen where its damage is not common and there's no pleasure for its damage. Therefore it's going to pay chatzi nezek like Karen. Okay, so we explained the first of the 4 av mazikin. We said what is Karen and what is its source and what are its toiladas. So the Gemara concludes part 1 of this question. Elos, now we're summing up the question. Taldaseyan lav kayetzeben, says the Gemara. Wait a second. This that you're saying the derivatives are not like the primary categories of damage. Domra Papa says, "Hi, which one is it going on?" Meaning, if you think it's going on the ones we just mentioned 4 teladis of Karen. How could you say? Ma'ishna Karen, what's the difference between the primary category of this mazik, which is with its horns? That you're going to make him liable the kavanas lahazik because yes, the animal's intent is to damage. It's your money. You own this ox. And it's your responsibility to watch it. Taninami. These 4 teladis also kavanas lahazik. The intent is to damage. It's your money. And you have to watch it. So the Gemara says, yes, obviously, keren, the teladis are ka yotzebehen. So it cannot be going on keren. So the Gemara says, okay. So then, says the Gemara, Ella, rather must be telada the keren ke keren, the derivative of keren to the keren. When Rav Papa says halacha, is a shein v'regel. Must be going on the mazik of shein and regel. So the Gemara opens up, and we'll just say this beginning part that says the Gemara, okay, shein v'regel. You're going to the next mazikin, which are the other 2 parts as we described. Shiur has 3 parts: keren, shein, and regel. So it's not the keren mazik. So shein v'regel. Okay, let's first say where is it written in the Torah? Now Braisa, Pasuk says in Shemais, it says that if a person will send, it says b'shilach, he's going to send es be'ira, his animal, and it's going to consume in another field. So then he has to pay from the best of his to pay for that damages. What does v'shilach mean? Zeh regel. That's actually referring to the mazik of with its feet. It says a pasuk in Yeshaya, Mishalchi regel hashrei b'chamar. He sends forth the feet of the ox and the donkey. You see that the word shilach refers to regel. And when it says ubir, that it says it's going to be ubir b'stei acher, zu hashen. That's the mazik of when it consumes with its teeth. Where do you find that? It says a pasuk in Malach of Aleph. It says, therefore I'm going to bring the bad to the house of Yeravam, and I'm going to cut off Yeravam. And it says I'm going to wipe out after the household of Yeravam, kashiyavar, as a getin top of Gimel and Aleph, hagalol. Now, it says how it's going to do beer, which is to get rid of. Hagalol, now Rashi says gul is the teeth. Why is gul the teeth? Why is it shein? Because sometimes it's revealed, gal is from revealing, and sometimes it's covered. So it gets revealed. This means that actually the word di even gul, a pasuk in Ezra, refers to marble. And that refers to the teeth, because the teeth are like marble. So either way, Hagul is referring to teeth, ad tumai, until it's finished. So, and you see it says yavar. So you see ubir is referring to the mazik of shein. Another interpretation Rashi brings is that galol is actually refers to waste matter, as brought many times in Shas, Glali Adam, as the Gemara brings, it's a pasuk in Yechezkel. So that refers to shein because the teeth destroy the food and it becomes waste matter. So therefore that's a third interpretation of why it's referring to teeth. Upon him, the Gemara just began this discussion of shein regel, that the pasuk that says b'shilach is like we see regel, and a beer is referring to shein. It's very important just to get that because the Gemara is going to be discussing that next time. Anytime.